Hey everybody, welcome back to another Sunday Night Live over here on the channel. Before we get started, I always like to make sure I am live, so if no one joins in on the discussion, that when it goes into a replay, you guys can be able to watch the video back and put any of your questions, your comments, your suggestions, anything you're seeing in the housing market below in our comments. And don't forget again to hype the video. So if you see after the video is finished and you actually go scroll down and you see a button underneath of it, should look like a shooting star, and you can hype the video. It'll help to push us through the algorithm a little bit better. But let me just check. Underneath of it should look like a shooting star, and you can hype the video. All right, I just wanted to check and make sure my sound wasn't off. As we go on, you guys can let me know. If you're new to the channel, also don't forget to subscribe to the channel. I appreciate you coming over here. We would love to know where you kind of found us at, and you can put that below either in the chat while we're live, or you could also put it in the comments on the replay if you're watching the replay. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel. We love everybody that comes over here, has this discussion with us, and don't be scared to say what you got to say, and put it below in the comments if you're watching the replay, and if you're live, put it in the discussion box as we talk about what is happening in this housing market. Hey, what's going on, Miss H? How you doing? How you doing tonight? I appreciate you being here. Thank you, Miss H, for tuning in. I saw Lauren say, can't wait for this to start. Hey, Lauren, hopefully you're still around. All right, so let me turn my music off. I don't know how loud it is on the other side. All right, so what we're going to do first is we're just going to get into, we're going to jump into first the mortgage rates. So if you guys haven't been watching closely in regards to the mortgage rates, if you are in the market or you want to either try to buy, sell in the future to buy again, and all those different crazy things, we're going to check real quick into the mortgage rates. So if you guys haven't been watching the mortgage rates, they actually went down January 15th, but they climbed back up again. And so we're going to take a look at the mortgage rates so we can get a little understanding. So we're looking at, according to Mortgage News Daily. So if you guys want to, you can hop over there. You can look at how the rates are moving daily. And then also, they also have an app that you can download on your phone that I have as well. Again, remember that these rates are national. So that just because you see a certain rate does not mean that's what you're going to get when you go to sit down with a lender and talk. Every person's situation is different. The way in which you get a mortgage, your mortgage rate is going to be different according to the different circumstances you have that lay out in your background, your debt to income ratio, your credit score, different type of things. All right. Hey, Dad, how you doing? And so we'll go through the rates real quick. As I said, January 15th, we saw the rates kind of go down low. So let's start at the conventional real quick. So the conventional rate right now is hovering nationally at 6.19. I don't know if you guys can see that. Let me make it a little bit bigger so you can see the conventional part of it. And then we'll jump into this crazy conversation because I'm like, what? I'm like, WTF with this housing market, y'all. WTF, if you know what that means, that acronym. So as of January 23, 2026, we're at 6.19. Again, nationally, it can change. They're saying the prior year, as you can see, around this time it was at 7.12. So we have dipped a good point and a little percentage per se of that, according to the year prior, which was 2025 around January. And then this is where we kind of went all the way down here, January 15th. As you can see, those rates hit really low at 6.04. And they dived down here, and then they went back up, as you guys can see, as the next day came, next day, and then 20th and everything went back up, and then they dipped back down again. So as of right now, this is where your national median, I guess you could say, I guess I would say, I don't want to say it a medium rate, mortgage rate, but this is where your national rates are kind of falling right now for conventional. Again, it's subjective to every person. So that doesn't mean you're going to see this rate, and then we'll go real quick to, FHA and VA, and then we'll hit into what we're going to talk about this crazy market. Again, with the FHA, it dipped all the way down to 5.7. A year prior, around January 15th, it was at 6.55. And then we saw it go back up again. And then we saw it dip, go back up. And then it kind of stayed steady here, didn't really move. And then it dipped a little bit. So this is where you're seeing it at right now with FHA as far as the rates. And then let's go to the VA. And the reason why I'm picking these three, because typically most people utilize these three different type of mortgages, right? Conventional, FHA, and VA, if you are a veteran. So let's hit the VA real quick. And again, we saw the similar thing, right? We saw the interest rates dip at the 15th. And I believe the reason why the interest rates dipped on the 15th, they were kind of, I don't want to say it was because of what Donald Trump said about the investors, because the investor thing, it kind of actually made the market seem like it made it shoot back up and not really go down. I just think that the market was trying to kind of level off around there. And then every day, as he says more and more things, the administration does more and more things, it causes so much uncertainty with the Treasury, the 10-year Treasury, and all those different things. So that is where the rates are at right now. Okay, so VA 5.887 nationally. All right, so let's get off of this. Let's head over real quick to the Treasury. As you guys all know, the 10-year Treasury, that is where you want to kind of look at and see how that's doing in regards to your mortgage rate. Typically, the 10-year Treasury follows that in regards to the mortgage rate. So let's go over to the 10-year Treasury real quick. If you want more information about how this kind of moves, you could reach out to a lender, a financier, or an economist. I am a realtor. However, I do stay up to date on these things because as a realtor, we should be knowledgeable about all this. But at the end of the day, if you want more depth inside research in regards to all this stuff, I definitely tell you to reach out to an economist or a lender to kind of give you more of how mortgage rates kind of move. Typically, as you guys know, most people believe that the mortgage rates move because of the Feds moving interest rates up and down. However, we all know that sometimes it typically kind of follows a trend as far as when they do that, but recently, and there has been years prior where that trend hasn't followed, because most of the time the mortgage rates move in regards to the 10-year Treasury. So let's go to this 10-year Treasury real quick. As you guys can see, we're at 4.217. Sorry. It was up and then it came down. And so I just wanted to show this chart as well. If you guys can see, let me make it bigger. Back all the way in the 80s, see how high this was with the Treasury and everything. They were very high up to dang near at 15.82 when it came to the yield. And then it started going down. And it went really, dropped really low in the 2008 mark. And if you guys know, when the 2008 situation, it was the great financial housing crash in regards to what was happening. So it dipped here in 2008, went back up high. It stayed in the threes, dipped again. And then it dipped some more in 2012, which that was a time where they were trying to figure everything out, right? The government put in place and called local institutional investors, hedge funds, corporate investors to kind of come and start buying some housing. And I feel like that was the time in which we started seeing these people enter the market, right? Once these institutional investors, these corporate investors, these hedge funds entered the market, they saw that they could profit off of it, right? They were buying houses low. And typically most people know, even in stocks, you buy low, you sell high, you buy low, you put the rent, accordingly, so you can make some type of money out of it. And that's what they were doing. They got a nice little taste of it because the government needed a sense of bailout. They lowered those rates, as you can see, because in 2012 as well, as you can see, it was at 1.6430 was where it closed out at. It opened at 2.23 and the high was 2.3. So it wasn't really much of a quote unquote, as you can say, mortgage rate, right? The rates were lower, and we'll kind of show a chart real quick with the Federal Reserve in St. Louis, and you'll kind of be able to make that out as far as around this time. And then of course we saw here again when the pandemic hit, they were uncertain of what was going to happen, and they basically dropped it down to 0.65, right? So again, we saw those interest rates drop all the way down to like 2%. People were, jumping on it quickly. People were refinancing like, oh, wow, 2% interest rate. If you had a mortgage that you bought, let's say you bought a house in 2001 and your mortgage, let's just say was about, I think around that time, mortgages might've been about 7-8%. Don't quote me on that, but now this is a time to refinance, right? You can refinance, maybe go to a 15-year, mortgage per se, right? If you were a 30, maybe go to 15-year, you might be paying a similar amount when it came to your mortgage, or you might be paying lower, right? Depending on how much was left on your loan to pay off. So you want to follow this Treasury, this 10-year Treasury yield. So you guys can always go to CNBC, check that out. Just type in 10-year Treasury year via Google. Right now we're sitting at 4.21. So we're technically not really high. when it comes to that yield. However, the problem is, again, the unaffordable housing. So it's making it seem like everything is just overly expensive, which it is. It ain't making it seem it is overly expensive. So we'll jump off of that, and then we'll go real quick into the FRED so you guys can see how that corresponds and translates. So yeah, we're just doing a quick little housekeeping stuff here in regards to these mortgage rates. Again, I'm not a lender. I am a realtor. However, we should know these things because everything goes tandem. And then we'll jump into the Davos speech. I don't know if you guys saw Donald Trump talking about different things, and I'm just like, okay, man, I don't know. Maybe I'm a little crazy, but you guys let me know how you feel about when we play some of this speech. Maybe I'm hearing stuff wrong, or maybe I'm just experiencing life differently. Maybe I live in the twilight zone because some of the stuff he said, I'm like, what, sir? Am I confused? I'm like, my friends are experiencing different things. I'm just confused. So, all right, let's jump into when it comes to these rates, right? These interest rates. So again, when it comes to how it moved throughout the year, again, in the 80s, we saw things go all the way up to 17. I don't know if you got 18%, basically with interest rates, with mortgage rates, I should say, with mortgage rates. So some people might have got a mortgage rate as high as 18% in the 80s. Again, the housing around that time, and we'll pull up a chart for that as well. The housing around that time in the 80s was way, was less compared to now, where most houses is dag near $400,000, $500,000 for a house. So it's definitely different. And then we saw it swoop back down. And the reason why I'm showing this chart is hopefully if you guys checked out that 10-year treasury yield, you can kind of see how we were moving down. And then in 2008, as we went down, we were down again. And then in 2008, right here, we went to 5.6. And then again, when we got to that 2012, we see how the rates went down. So the rates all the way in 2012 went down to like 3, 4. What was going down from 3 to 4. And then it went back up. And then so always since 2012-ish, I would say, let's just say 2011, we kind of saw the 4s and the 3s, and it was staying in 4s and 3s for the all the way into 2019, really. And so most people, if you were buying a house, it was probably more affordable. Those interest rates were lower. They weren't like, the rates prior. So, and the reason why I bring this up as well is because I get a lot of clients who reach out to me and they're like, oh, the 3% mortgage rate, the 4% mortgage rate was a normal mortgage rate to buy a house. And I keep telling people, no, it wasn't. Typically, the rates were between like 5 and 7%. That's where you kind of saw a lot of the mortgages kind of hover in regards, as you guys can see here, for a lot of years. We had that 5 to 6%, 7%, and it kind of hovered here a lot. Coming down from the 80s into the 2000s, and then when you go all the way back before there, you get it back in the 7s again, right in the 70s. So I let people talk to people in regards to letting them know like the typical mortgage rate really was around the 5s and the 6s and the 7s until we got to 2020, where we saw an abnormal rate because how low they dropped that treasury yield. And because of that, you had a lot of people, the investors, because what happens with the treasury is that investors come in, they buy bonds, right? They buy bonds, they buy them low, and then they eventually will possibly sell them high. Just like stocks, you buy low, you sell high. Again, just like real estate, you buy low, you sell high. And so that's what these investors do. The same way they jump into real estate, the same way they jump into the bonds, the same way they jump into stocks. This is what people do, right? You want to get your ROI, which is your return of investment. You want a good return of investment. So, and then now, as you guys can see, we're hovering back up in this typical area where we've seen most of the early 2000s, late 90s, early 2000s. Okay. All right. So that is the FRED chart. And then we'll go real quick to the medium homes. Hey, Kotexita, he said, had to use my evil twins ID again. Okay, no problem. I'm glad your evil twin is here today. Let me see. Miss H. Sorry. Excuse me. So, Clark, are they heading up or down for someone eating to buy or wanting? I see what you say, wanting to buy a home now. So right now, the mortgage rates are hovering in the 6s. You can possibly, depend again on your circumstances, you might be able to get them in the 5s, maybe the high 5s, maybe 5.7, 5.8, 5.9, depending on your circumstances. But right now, most people are seeing interest rates around the 6%, low 6s per se, maybe 6.12, 6.15. Again, it changes depending on your circumstances, but that's where we're kind of seeing the rates hovering. So I don't really see them going down or dipping that much this year, to be honest. But again, I don't have a crystal ball. I don't know what the future will say. It all depends on the craziness that we're hearing from this administration, what he's trying to do. As you guys all know, Trump wants to lower. He wants mortgage rates to go lower. He wants interest rates to also go lower in regards to the feds, just because it's easier for them and it's better for them when it comes to borrowing money. It's a better risk asset risk adverse a little when you're buying low or things are lower, and then as time goes on you can go high, right? Even when it comes to them reorganizing their debt, if you have it lower you can refinance and all those things. So he's trying to get it lower. Honestly, I feel like if they go lower, hopefully us Americans will not make the same mistake in which they did in 2020, outside of just investors also entering into the field, because a lot of during 2020, when the rates dipped low, most Americans, I'm not saying that they don't save, but most Americans, we really don't save, right? And so because we don't save, we're not sitting aside saving up to buy a house, as far as saving that big down payment per se, right? Or closing costs on top of that, if you cannot get those things. And so because of that, when that 2020 hit and those rates went low, more investors, and not just corporate investors, not institutional investors, not just hedge funds, but also you had local mom and pop investors buying more real estate. You had flippers, real estate agents got into the business. They called themselves, as we talked on the last live, they started, even down here in Metro Atlanta, they started marketing themselves as builders and they don't have no builder license. When we go on the builder license website, they're not official builders. So then they started saying, oh, I'm a developer, and they've been using builder's license to build their houses, and they were building in Metro Atlanta, and they're still doing it. They're building in Metro Atlanta, building these houses, and then they're selling them for a higher price point. And so you had a lot of that kind of entering into the market outside of just regular homeowners trying to get into the space. And when that happened, it caused a lot of the prices to go up, because you have so many people in a space that they should not be in when it comes to single family home ownership. So I'm hoping and praying that if those rates drop again, we don't see that. But because a lot of that was kind of fueled by those different aspects of investors and not just institutional investors, because as we saw on the last slide, we talked about most of the institutional investors are situated in certain areas. They're not all around in the United States of America, and a lot of them are in the Metro Atlanta area. So I do talk a lot about them down here because I see it all the time. I see it in the back data, I see it in my MLS, and I see how they're doing things in this particular market as far as manipulating the values and also stripping equity, but also pushing up equity in certain areas. So that's the reason why I talk about it. But needless to say, sorry, I just went on a whole different tangent when it comes to your question, Ms. H. But as far as them heading down, I don't see it dipping that much unless we get some type of situation where he just forces them to make it go lower. So let's switch over real quick so I am saying what the F to the housing market. All right, so again, as we saw, and I'm just relating this to, of course, the chart when it came to the rates in the 10-year treasury. Again, in the 80s, as you saw, interest rates were at 18% where people were buying. However, houses around that time were about $60-something thousand, right? So you take that 18% by that $60,000, your monthly mortgage is probably higher. Well, probably been like $1,000 something, maybe close to 2,000. I don't know, if I can't do the quick math per se, but it might have been around there. However, as we know too, during these times, the income was growing, right? So income was on track. It wasn't growing super high, but it was staying steady, and it was growing across the board where people can make out and can afford to live, buy houses and be able to live. And then as you see, it keeps going up. And then we saw, of course, the crash here where it kind of hit. It went up. It was 257. It dipped all the way to in 209 to 208, and then 223 back. It dipped again. Excuse me. And now it's going higher and higher and higher when it comes to our medium housing. All right. So now the next thing that I wanted to talk about too is in regard to. Let me take this off. Sorry. In regard to, I always look at when it comes to home ownership, where do we fall at on the list of home ownership in the United States of America? Because we're not number one. However, everybody's, way in which they put stuff in order, the chart is different. So let's check out real quick the world when it comes to who is number one in home ownership. And again, this is based off of their data. So this is based off a world population review in regards to home ownership by country. Can I put this down? Sorry, I don't know why this is up. I feel like if I click it, it's going to make something happen. So number one is Kazakhstan. I don't know if I'm saying that right. Excuse me with my reading. Number two is China, and this is all according to the data. So this is from 2024. It's about 98% home ownership rate in Kazakhstan. I don't know if I'm saying that right. 2024. So it says China 96%. 2022, and some of this data has yet to be updated, like Laos. So it's showing you where these different countries fall in regards to home ownership rate in their country. And as you see, as we keep going down, the United States will pop up, but we ain't at the top. We ain't at the top. So like all the stuff that, and the reason why I'm showing this is because watching the Davos speech and watching Trump talk about how America leads this in the world, America's this and this and this. And I'm like, okay, sir, am I confused? Because according to this data, and again, data can be misconstrued and different things could happen, but we ain't number one according to this data. And it's just me, doing my research. Poland, India, Bulgaria, Nepal. So we keep going down. Indonesia, Taiwan, Pakistan, Mexico, Norway, as we keep going down, Malaysia, Egypt, we're going down, Trinidad, Tobago, Italy, Spain, as we keep going down, Kenya, Iceland, Netherlands, South Africa, Greece. So as you guys can see, we are here. So we're way down. We ain't all the way at the bottom. According to 2024, 65.7%. We're under Australia, under Canada. We're above the United Kingdom. And yeah, so we're not all the way at the bottom, but out of all the countries, we almost there. Because you see, we ain't that far from the bottom. Look, we right here. And look how far away from the bottom. We ain't that far. So we do not lead the world in home ownership. We do not lead the world when it comes to all this information that the Trump administration talk about, and also what bleeds out of his mouth. And I need people to understand this. I'm not saying that like I'm against people or whatever per se of their thoughts and their opinions, but what I'm scared of is that we get a lot of misinformation put out there, and without a lot of people nowadays doing the research and digging into the data to kind of see stuff. And we know that data can be misconstrued. We understand that because we cannot collect every sense of data. However, we're going off of what they can collect, right? Cotexita said, last house my parent bought in 1976 was a 2-bedroom, 2-bath finished basement, $47,000. That is excellent. I'm like, I wish houses cost $47,000 nowadays, but of course we can't do that. We can't make houses go that far back down again. But it would be great to see it. I feel like we would have more movement. Well, we definitely would have movement in the housing market. We definitely would have more first-time home buyers buying, because we are losing that. And first-time home buyers, and we'll bring that up right now in regards to the NAR pending home sales. So I would love to see that, but of course, we would be stripping a lot of people's equity, and people would be mad at me. So, and Miss H said, "You're saying it correct." Thank you. I was make sure I was saying it right. Thank you. I appreciate it. Hey, what's going on, Lang? Good evening, everyone. I hope everyone is safe. Yes, hopefully everyone is safe. If the storm has hit you, if you guys had this wintry, stormy mix down here in the Metro Atlanta area, it has rained and it's raining, and it'll probably freeze over into ice. I know up north they got hit with a lot of snow. So hopefully you're inside, you're safe, you're snuggled up. All right, so let's talk about this real quick. I don't know if you guys saw this that came out in regards to the NAR, which is the National Association of Realtors, in regards to pending home sales reports. Shows 9.3% decrease in December. And again, how they always word stuff, they word it in a sense of they have to sensationalize it. They have to create a story around it, right? But when you actually start reading the article, this 9.3%, they're basing it off of last month's sales, but they're not basing it off of year-to-year sales. And so I saw some people making videos about this, and they were reporting the information wrong. So I was like, did they read the actual article? So it basically says pending home sales in December decreased by 9.3% from the prior month. So as they're saying, that's the prior month. So from November, and 3.0% year over year. So now the 3.0% is the decrease in pending home sales year over year, meaning from December to December, it was 3%. All right, not 9.3%. It's just the way in which the article is written to make you believe so. And some people have been reporting it as so. However, it's still, it's still a significant amount. So even though it's low, it's still a significant amount. According to the National Association of Realtors pending home sales report, the report provides the real estate ecosystem, including agents and home buyers, sellers with data on the level of home sales under contract. So as you guys know, pending sales mean that these were sales that were, these are sales that are under contract that are pending to close. And if you guys don't know, a lot of the real estate data always does lag, right? It lags. So typically we don't see data for it might be a month later, it might be 2 months, 3 months later. And if they don't put out the reports, it might be 4 to 6 months later, to be honest. So we just got to keep up on what the data is saying. MHOA say, LOL, first house my parents bought in 1966 was 4-bedroom, 1.5 bath, 2-story unfinished basement, $16,000. Oh baby, your parents was winning. Your parents was winning $16,000. If we could only see a $16,000 house nowadays, you can get $16,000 land depending on where you buy it in Atlanta. But a house right now, you ain't seeing that. Even these houses that's torn down, holes in the floor, foundation leading to the left, to the right, the whole roof cracked open, the house been burnt down. They like $100,000. You like what? $100,000. So yeah, we ain't seeing that. Even if the house is burnt down and destroyed, it could be flood damage, it could be burnt the heck down to the ground. They like, we see boards on the ground, so that's worth $70,000 for the boards. But I'm dead. I'm telling the truth though. Even though it's not funny, but it's funny because I just look at it, I'm like, this is a house that I gotta go and basically, bring back up to refurbish and bring it back up to speed. And I'm paying $70,000 for this house that's moving to the left, moving to the right, and the tree fell through the roof. But thank you for pointing out the actual difference versus the spin. You're no problem. Thank you, Javon. Hopefully I'm saying your name right. Thanks for joining the chat. And if you're new here, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel. But we appreciate you jumping in our chat and having a conversation. Kotex Sita, the house payment was $110 a month. I thought that was a lot of money. Yeah, I know back then, because back in the day, I remember, well, even though I wasn't born in the 60s, but even in my time in the 80s and the 90s, when I get like the little 5-cent candy and all that stuff, I'm like, ooh, that's that was, to me, that was a lot, because even though it was 5 cents, it was still a lot because I ain't had no money. I wasn't working. Javon said, I think $500 a month was expensive. Yes, I remember that too. I remember $500 a month. My rent used to be $500 a month before. So I remember that. I remember those days of $500 a month that I thought was expensive. I'm like, how am I going to make it through this? $500 a month. Month over month, pending home sales declined in all 4 regions. So the pending home sales did decline in all 4 regions year over year. Pending home sales rose in the South and declined in the Northeast. And so Midwest and the West. And so I thought this was actually interesting that the home sales, pending home sales rose in the South, which would make sense, I guess, a little bit, because in the South, if you started as prices started to soften a little quicker, depending on where you went to in the South, so say parts of Florida, maybe some parts of Georgia, maybe different areas in Texas, you might have saw some homes kind of depreciating a little bit, and because of that, it probably was an increase as far as people shifting from other states or shifting from out of the countries to certain areas, and maybe you saw that rise in those pending sales. He said, live from South Korea. Oh, wow. Well, thanks for joining us from South Korea. I truly appreciate your time. What time is it over in South Korea? I've never been to South Korea. What time is it over in South Korea? All right. So it says, though housing sector. So this is Lawrence Yu. He is the NAR chief, so National Association chief economist. The housing sector is not out of the woods yet, he said. After several months of encouraging signs and pending contracts and closed sales in December, new contract figures have dampened the short and term outlook. So he's saying that these contracts have kind of dampened the short term outlook. But if things change, coming the next time they report any type of the pending sales, any closed sales. He's hoping that we might see a change in the housing market. Even after accounting for typical seasonal patterns, interrupted in-person home search activity in the winter, especially in December, can be tricky due to public holidays, people taking time off work, and wintry weather conditions. Ewan added, we'll be watching the data in the coming months to determine whether the soft contract signals were a 1 month aberration. I don't know if that's aberration or abbreviation. Am I saying it like abbreviation? No, that's not abbreviation. Aberration. I don't know. Or the start of an underlining trend. I'm sorry, y'all, if I mispronounced the word. Don't get mad at me. Oh, wow. 9:30 a.m. in the morning. Wow. You on so I'm 7:30 where I'm at. So wow, you're almost a whole day ahead. Almost a whole day ahead of me, just 2 hours short of it. Wow. Well, I appreciate you jumping on at 9:30 in the morning. I appreciate your time. He said, Code Taxi said, LOL, what are the markets doing? That's actually a good question. Code Taxi, what are the markets? What is the housing market looking like over there in South Korea? Did I just lose my Wi-Fi? Am I still here? I had frozen my end. What does the housing market look like in South Korea? Because as we can see, South Korea homeownership is up higher than Americans' homeownership. So how is the housing market over in South Korea? I know everyone's saying that the housing market is kind of taking a hit all around the world, but I would love to know what it's looking like in South Korea. That is a good question. All right, and so let's go. Okay, now my thing is, did I freeze again? I froze again. I think it's because they don't want me to talk about this information, you guys. All right, let me take some of this stuff off of my screen because I'm freezing and I was looking up stuff in tax records before I came on here. So I'll take that off my screen. Data shows closing activity increased in December. However, new listings did not keep pace, so inventory decreased. So as you guys know, some people were putting houses on the market, then they were taking them off the market. So if they weren't getting what they wanted or they felt like it wasn't quickly being sold, they took it off the market. A lot of realtors might have had conversations with them, said, hey, let's take it off the market. Let's kind of go and restructure this marketing strategy again, and then let's put it back on the market, maybe list it a little lower. I've actually seen some times where they'll take it off the market and it hasn't been selling, and they will relist it at a higher price. Yeah, so let me know if any of you guys seen that where you saw a house on the market, they take it off the market after sitting for months on end, and then they relist it higher. So I'm guessing they might have relisted it higher for the sense of those holding fees. I don't know. Consumer prefers seeing abundant inventory before making the major decision of purchasing a home. Yes, that is true. Due to how the housing market is nowadays, and I will always tell someone to do this as a buyer, is that you do want to kind of see as much as you can. Of course, you don't want to overwhelm your realtor, right? If you can go out to any open houses that are happening, if you're looking at new construction, you can also go on site to the new construction. Let your realtor, of course, if you're working with one, just let them know I'm going to go see some new construction. And then if there are certain homes that you want to see, because nowadays everybody can see these homes on Zillow, Redfin, you can kind of take e-tours, you can take pictures, and of course the pictures aren't the best, so you do want to see them in person, but you want to kind of create a understanding of what houses you want to see that the realtor would go and open up for you. But you do want to take your time, you do want to assess the market, you do want to see the houses because you do want to inspect them. But like I said, when it comes to utilizing the realtor, guys have to also understand that we are all people. So we all have lives and circumstances and things that we have to do. So we have to be very gracious on everyone's time, even though I know some people are like, what you mean? You work for me. And it's like, no, we work together. All right. Javon said South Korea is way worse, especially in Seoul. Wow. $850,000 for a 1,200 square foot apartment is not so great area. Oh, 850. Is that equating? That's equating to Korean money. I don't know if I'm saying it right. How would you equate that to American money if you can for me? Because $850,000, woo. No, that's crazy. So the decline in pending home sales could be a result of a dampened consumer enthusiasm about buying a home when there are so few options listed for sale. So again, people are having that. I'm dealing with buyers happening to them right now, right? We have because people are not feeling like they can get what they want, or because some people are actually stuck inside their houses now. If you guys don't know, we talked about this on the last live, that even the people who might have bought a house with a lower interest rate, that lower interest rate might have put them in a good area with their mortgage. However, if the property taxes increase, especially if they bought new construction, their taxes was based off of the land. So they're seeing their escrow increase, which means the property taxes, the home insurance increase somewhere. If they have HOA due to inflation, that also increases well for those reserves, for those also to maintain those different areas. If you have a pool, tennis court, all those different things, cutting grass, that also went up as well. So those people who might have bought at a lower interest rate, now depending on where they're at, if the home builder is still building houses similar to them, like let's just say right up the street, and it's for less than what they bought it for, but they're depending on how much they put down into the house, their loan could possibly still be higher than what the house down the street is worth. That's new construction. And some of these people are stuck and they can't afford to bring money to the closing table to get out of their house. So even though they might have got a lower rate, if they didn't pay in cash, well, if they paid in cash, you wouldn't have no rate. But if they were able to put more down, say if the house was $400,000 and they put $350,000 down, then they're cool, right? If they put $100,000 down, they're cool, right? But if they didn't put anything down, did the FHA or did the VA, they put no money down, or they put little to no money down, and the house down the street is cheaper now to buy compared to what they bought it for, even though they have a lower interest rate. Some of these people are stuck, so they can't even list their house on the market because they can't afford to bring money to the closing table. And because of that, they're like, okay, what I'm going to do? And so you'll see a lot on the back end. Well, you guys don't see it, but I'll see a lot of these people claiming bankruptcy. I'll see a lot of these people having pre-foreclosure notices, distress notices, less pendants, a lot of different things happening on the background that you guys don't see with some of these people who bought in 2021, 2022, 2023, who might have had lower interest rates, but now they're stuck. They're trying to get out because of circumstances. They might have lost their job. They might, things might have happened. Maybe they're getting a divorce. Different things are happening, right? Because as human beings, as time goes on, things happen. So USD, $850,000 in American money. Wow. Are they rich in South Korea? Y'all got money like that over there? Wow. That's a lot of money. 850,000 US dollars for 1,200 square feet apartment. Oh yeah, no. I won't be in no South Korea because I told myself I want to buy real estate outside of America, especially somewhere that doesn't have property taxes. And so South Korea will not be on my bucket list. I'm sorry, Javon. I'm sorry, but I appreciate the information. I will not be going there. So it says in December there were only 1.8 million homes on the market, matching the lowest inventory since 2025. And as we dive again into the decrease, so it says 9.3 decrease month over month, year over year, 3 points decrease year over year. It says right here in the Northeast region, you see 11% decrease month over month. And then right here, 3.6% decrease year over year. And then the Midwest, you got the 14.9% decrease month over month, 9.8% decrease year over year. And then the South, as you see, the decrease is just 4.0 decrease month over month. And then there's an increase of 2% year over year. So the South again saw an increase. And then it starts going down here. We see the West as well. It says, while national pending home sales dipped in December, several local markets are showing notable year-over-year gains among 50 large metro areas. So we're seeing Louisville, Kentucky, it looked like Indiana, Texas, Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, Massachusetts, New Hampshire, Arizona, Oklahoma, Florida. So as you guys can see, the real estate market is all over the place. That's why I'm like, what the F is happening with this housing market? Because we see different patterns, and even where you're located, depending on the state that you're in, it'll be one area where you'll see an appreciation happening with home prices, and then it'll be right down the street, it'll be a depreciation of like 10%, depending on where you're at. Like in my market, you might see depreciation at 8%, 9%, and then you'll see different states where you see an appreciation, as you can see, like they're saying like 8% as far as the home sales and pending sales and all stuff. So it's like this market is just all over the place. So when you're looking to buy a property, you want to talk to a local professional real estate person, advisor, agent, lender who's really understanding what's happening in that market and also in that area, because it's what the heck, this stuff is all over the place. It's very localized, even when it comes to just the neighborhood. And as you see, it breaks it down even more and more here. All right, so now if you guys don't know, also we'll talk about this and then we'll get into crazy Trump. Donald Trump signed a national executive order to ban institutional investors. We talked about this on the last live in regards to him wanting to ban institutional investors. The White House put out a press release in regards to this. It says stopping Wall Street from competing with Main Street home buyers. Can you guys see this? All right. And it says today, as we all know, Donald Trump signed an executive order to protect the American dream by making sure large institutional investors do not buy single-family homes that could otherwise be purchased by families. And so some of these key points I was confused by because I'm like, this already exists, so why are we putting this in here? But okay, I'm like, maybe people don't realize that some of this stuff is already in place. But I'm like, okay, so what are we doing? It says the order directs key agencies to issue guidance preventing relevant federal programs from approving, ensuring, granting, securitizing. Am I saying that right? Hopefully I am. Or facilitating sales or single-family homes to institutional investors. So this right here got me confused, and maybe I'm just reading into it. It says federal programs from approving, ensuring, and granting. And so my thing is that when it comes to the federal programs as an institutional investor, are they only doing this if they were to take a possible loan or something from these federal programs? Because if an investor comes in and buy cash, how do you approve, guarantee, ensure, facilitate a sale? I don't know. So I was a little confused about that, and I might be reading too deep into the wording of it all because I'm like, okay, what if they come in with cash? So I could be reading it wrong though. It could just mean like the FHA, HUD, and all them, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac just can't, allow for them to buy. It says the order instructs key agencies to promote sales to individual occupants through first look policies, which give individuals and other non-institutional investors the opportunity to buy foreclosed properties before investors do, disclosure requirements, and anti-circumvention measures. So this already exists. So I don't know and to what capacity they're going to put this down in, because if you guys know what HUD, if you go to their website, it does state that you typically have about the person that could buy it first is a homeowner occupant, particularly about 90 days before an investor can come in, and then also nonprofit institutional nonprofits can also purchase as well. So this right here, I'm like, that already exists. So I don't know to what measure this would be implemented in as well. Yeah, so I'm like, okay, where's the change? Next, okay, because I'm like, where's the change? The order directs the Secretary of the Treasury to review rules and guidance that relate to large institutional investors acquiring or holding single-family homes. So this right here, in regards to this, tell them they're gonna kind of review everything. So I don't know if this means how many they'll put in place as far as how many homes that large institutional investor can acquire. And also this part right here, which again is I'm just looking at this word holding. So I'm like, are you guys going to force some of these institutional investors to sell off some of their property because you're saying holding as well? Yeah, so we'll see. Korea average income around $4,000 USD a month. Marriage age 32. Living with parents until married. Families have 1 to 2 children. Some people work 6 days or 52 hours per week. Wow. I'm like, I feel like we work hard in America. It seems like y'all working even harder in South Korea. Wow. At least it seemed like you guys, typically you get a couple days off per se, but 52 hours per week, Jesus, I'll be like, ooh, 40 hours. So I'm like, yeah, wow, that's very interesting. But at least your marriage is still good around here. I said marriage age is around 32, so at least people are still kind of getting married in your country. Because America, we're seeing less marriage and less population as far as children being born, because a lot of Americans cannot afford to live nor pay their daggone student loans or pay their car notes or their daggone mortgages or rent. Code Texasita is called Blowing Smoke. It definitely is called Blowing Smoke. So I appreciate everybody being here tonight. I know I don't always want to feel like I'm a Debbie Downer when it comes to real estate. I just want to show you the information. Of course, like I tell everybody, real estate is the decision you make by yourself, right? If you want to buy, if you want to sell, that's the ultimate decision you make by yourself. I just always tell people, just make sure you're in a good financial situation. Make sure you have your ducks in a row. And I can't tell you when to buy because everybody's circumstance is different. However, I just say just be smart about you buying and write things down, and just see when it makes sense for you to buy or sell. Right. The next one was it directs the Attorney General and the Chairman of the Federal Trade Commission to review acquisitions by large institutional investors for anti-competitive practices and prioritize enforcement against certain of those practices by institutional investors in single-family home rental market. So I felt like this was a lot of jumbo just to say jumbo so my big thing about this, to be honest, when it comes to this whole institutional investor banning this stuff, again, as you guys saw in the last slide, we talked about a lot of these institutional investors are not in every market. Yes, down in Metro Atlanta, please ban these daggone institutional investors in regards to a certain amount of houses that they can buy. I understand that they need to buy some, right? Just because the sense of people who want to rent single family houses, they need to rent it from somewhere, right? Whether institutional investors, mom and pop investors. So I'm not saying totally throw them out of the market, right? But I'm saying if it's a subdivision of 70 homes, they don't need to buy 50 homes. They don't need to buy, they don't need to buy a bunch of new construction homes. If there's a new construction community being built and they're building 50 homes, they don't need to buy 25 of them. Okay, because you're already going to get one-off investors as well, mom and pop investors, happen chance investors like I always call them, where they have a house, they got to move. Somebody bought the house as homeowner occupier, they got to move, and they can't get rid of it, so they end up renting it out. So because we're already going to have this mixture of what's going to happen in some of these neighborhoods, we don't need it to be so much, I guess say convoluted with so many investors, because then it does mess up the possibility of people's equity, the neighborhood, different things like that. So but in regards to this institutional investor ban, I'm like, okay, Trump, like, I don't know. I just be like, it says the order directs the Secretary of Housing and Urban Development to identify potential large institutional investors involved in the federal housing assistance program by demanding disclosure of home ownership and single family rentals. Okay. As we all know too, the government, again, during the housing great financial crash, they brought in corporate investors. They brought in hedge funds. They sold houses off in bulk, like at discount rate for the pennies on a dollar, to make sure the housing market didn't see an ultimate crash. Because I'm going to be honest, and I don't want to be a doomer and gloomer, because I love real estate. And I always, like I said, I always tell people, you buy when it makes sense to you, you sell when it makes sense to you as well. However, I feel like in 2008, 2009, we should have went through another depression. And instead, we were bailed out, and we keep kicking the can down the road, where we're not able to actually get to the sense of fully breaking everything down, burning to the ground, and rising again like as a phoenix, right? To be able to recover and put everybody in a good situation going forward. And I feel like that's globally around the world. I don't know other people's markets, but I just feel like we should have all, if the central banks and all those things would have kind of fell where they were supposed to fall, and we were able to actually restructure accordingly, I feel like future generations would be in a good situation come housing market, economy, everything, right? Buying cars, going to schools, and just different things. I just feel like we should have saw a reset. Massive perpetual debt here. Wow. That seems like it's a lot of debt there. It seems like it's hard to get out over there with that expense, and even working that hard and working that many days a week and those many hours, and still being to be able to afford over there. Wow, that's crazy. Wow. I'm glad that you joined tonight, Gavin. Of course, I'm glad everybody always joins, but it's always great to get perspectives of different people all over the world. Cotexita's in Denver and Colorado. So when you bring your perspective in, it's great too. David, he's not here tonight, but he's in Omaha. So it's always great to hear other people's perspective. Lang in Delaware, her housing perspective, Miss H, housing perspective. It's always great to hear everyone's housing perspective, because this is the purpose of doing lives, and this is the purpose that I do love about YouTube and all these other platforms. However, we have to be mindful, because people do paint pictures and make up narratives that are not true. However, I love that we can actually respond and talk about different things happening around the world in regards to housing or anything, right? So that is the beauty, and that is the blessing of being able to come live and talk to you guys. All right, so that's just a little bit about the institutional investor ban. So he did sign an executive order, but I want to jump off this, because if not, we won't be able to get to some of these speeches that he made at the Davos conference. So I'm going to start off first real quick in regards to Mr. Trumpy. And let me know your thoughts. We're going to watch this. If you guys watch this, we're not going to watch the whole video. I'll split it up a little bit as well. I might speed it up a little bit more. Let's speed it up a little bit more. All right. And so the first point he talks about as we were chatting in here in regards to the economy, that supposedly this is the best economy. Let's listen to him.
Yesterday marked the 1-year anniversary of my inauguration. And today, after 12 months back in the White House, our economy is booming, growth is exploding, productivity is surging, investment is soaring, incomes are rising.
All right, so whose income is rising? Raise your hand if your income is rising. Mine has not risen. So hopefully some people's did, and I'm pretty sure some people probably got raises. Some people probably got a nice job boost at your job in regards to your income. A lot of my friends they lost their jobs. Some of their jobs went bankrupt. Some of their jobs decided to tighten up because they are seeing the constraints of the economy. And because of that, these people, friends that I knew that were making six figures now have started making jobs below, have now had to go find a job that they're not making the same. So as far as their income's rising, not really. And again, this is just around me. I don't know about you guys and your perspective of what's happening around you, but I don't know personally nobody around me whose income has risen. But you let me.
Inflation has been defeated. Our previously open and dangerous border is closed.
And as well, inflation has been defeated, according to him as well. So no more going to the grocery store buying high behind groceries. Yes, in some areas, I have seen a dip a little bit in gasoline prices. However, the groceries is still high as heck. I don't know about you guys, but I went the other day because I wanted to decide to make a lasagna, and it cost me $60 to get the ingredients. So let me know your thoughts. But according to him, inflation is defeated.
And virtually impenetrable. And the United States is in the midst of the fastest and most dramatic economic turnaround in our country's history. Under the Biden administration.
So America is on a turnaround. And again, I don't want to get too political over here, but we have to know that all this coincides with each other, right? The economy coincides with the housing market. And even though this, we talk about real estate over here, but we also have to dip in and out of what is happening with our economy because it all coincides and it goes hand in hand with each other. Taxicita said $32 for a steak. Oh, exactly. So the inflation part to me is crazy how he says inflation is going down, but to each his own. I guess inflation is making its way back down or making its way downtown, as what Vanessa Carlton said. As we're homebound, but I'm confused, but okay. All right, let's go to his next point, which I think this is what
America was plagued by the nightmare of stagflation, meaning low growth and high inflation, a recipe for misery, failure, and decline. But now, after just 1 year of my policies, we are witnessing the exact opposite, virtually no inflation and extraordinarily high economic growth like I believe you'll see very shortly.
So we have no inflation now. We have no inflation. Inflation is done. It just disappeared out of nowhere. No inflation. But yet, as we saw earlier when we were chatting about the 10-year treasury, we're talking about the rates and all those different things. They can't make their way back downtown like Vanessa Carlton because there's an uncertainty, and there's also not a good strength when it comes to the economy, and also even investors who help to move the economy around. They don't want to buy. They're scared to buy. The uncertainty, the wackiness, the housing market is struggling. So I don't know. I'm just confused and baffled. LOL, I'm holding my tongue. I wonder how much of the GDP are tariffs. Yeah, I want to know too, because he's it's just he's interesting. Like, he's a very interesting guy. All right, so let's go over to 40.
Our country.
I cut some of this out so you guys don't have to listen to the whole thing. Let's go to 4616-ish area. So like right here. Let's see what he's talking about here.
Our military is very powerful. Our borders are very strong. And above all, our economy is strong because national security requires economic security and economic prosperity. And we have the greatest that we've ever had. Biden and his allies destroyed our economy and gave us perhaps the worst inflation in American history. They say 48 years, I say forever, but I think 48 years is the equivalent to forever. Whether it's
So my thing is that Gavin said no inflation. Exactly. Question mark is the answer. No inflation, buddy. I'm like, the world has seen inflation. In America, we have no inflation. We're just, we're the only eyeball out. No inflation hit us. However, then he goes and he turns around talking about the Biden administration put us in so much inflation. And then he kind of adds that on, not just that administration, but he's like 48 years of inflation. I mean, we know that, America has been, inflation has happened, right? Typically inflation happens and then you see recessions and you see inflation and you see recessions to kind of temper that stuff off. And that's why I said a little earlier, I don't want to be the doom and gloom of everything, but we need a bigger reset, and a recession just is not going to do it. But yeah, let's go back into the nonsense that this man likes to speak. And then the last two clips, I believe, is about him talking about the housing market.
48 years or ever, it's terrible. Costing the typical family $33,000. What they did to this country should never, ever be forgotten. It's early, but he has to be rated as the worst president we've ever had by far. The auto pen did much of the damage. The auto pen, he was the auto pen president, because I don't believe a sane president would have ever signed the kind of things that he signed. But now grocery prices, energy prices, airfares, mortgage rates, rent, and car payments are all coming down, and they're coming down fast. We inherited a mess, but we've done a hell of a...
So he's saying everything's coming down now as well. And yeah, we depend on where you're at, you're seeing home prices softening, right? Cars, I don't know, because I just had to recently, unfortunately, buy a car because my car, not having a car note, now having a car note again, is just like, ugh, it just kills me. But that car was not cheap. Had a lot of mileage on it for the price that I thought was crazy, because typically back in the day, if you had a car with maybe 50,000 miles on it at the time in early 2000s, you could probably get it for $5,000. Now you have 100,000 miles on it and the car is dang near $20,000. So I'm confused about it coming down, but I could be the only crazy one in the room. But who is to say we don't have other crazies? Because I'm just like, when I sat and heard this speech, I was just like looking at the TV, screaming and yelling, like, what am I confused? What is happening? Kotek Caesar said reckless use of stimulus checks caused the inflation. Yes, it was so many things outside of just the stimulus check, right? Just pumping the economy with so much money because of the uncertainty. And I honestly felt like what they should have did is when we hit that uncertainty part of the pandemic, not knowing what's going on, we shouldn't have did anything. We should have just waited. We should have just kind of assessed what was happening, right? To pump the economy. And I'm not an economist, I'm not a banker, I'm not a financier, but just looking from the back part and sitting back in the back of the car, I'm just like, why don't we just let everything play out and kind of see how it moved? I feel like we jumped on it so quickly that we didn't really see how things were moving, and they dropped stuff, the yield down so much. They manipulated the market so much that it caused a frenzy, and because of that, you had a lot of players that typically people have money, have dollars. They jumped in the market and they started playing. That's what they do. In a sense of time of fear, of time of terror, of time of uncertainty, you get people with the dollars. They jump into the market. They jump in. They like, oh baby, when there's blood in the street, we gonna go get the blood, right? And because of that, they made a lot of multi-billionaires, millionaires during that period. And now they're trying to fix it, but it's hard to fix it because these people that got the money now, they're like, oh, baby, we ain't going back. We got a nice taste of this money and we ain't going back, especially in the housing market. We ain't trying to go back. So, yeah. Miss H said, pay close attention for what's coming in February when driving your car. Oh, okay. What's happening in February, Miss H, in regards to driving the car? Because I haven't seen anything yet. Let me know. Let us all know. We would love to know what's going to happen in February. Hey, what's going on, Donna? Thanks for joining. We appreciate you being here. Kotek Caesar said, LOL, forget about voluntary repayment PPP loans. That's another thing, too. That's why I'm saying there's so much stuff that they pumped into the economy, these voluntary PPP loans. And, companies not paying it back, and more, and the bigger companies got more of it than the smaller small business companies. Most small businesses went out of business in your local town. So, and if you guys, depend on where you're at, the infrastructure, a lot of buildings closed down, and right now even in Metro Atlanta, depending on where you're at, I'm seeing a lot of businesses closing down still because of the economy. So yeah, I don't know. Okay, let's go to his next part of the crazy. Well, to me, he's crazy. Somebody else, he might not be crazy. So let me not say that. Let me not say that. God, please hold my tongue. Hold my tongue. I just be looking at this stuff like, oh my God. All right, let's see what he's talking about here. Uh-oh, what happened? Oh, hold on. Let me real quick. I gotta stop sharing because I can't share the commercial. I'm gonna let the commercial play real quick and then get back to it because I can't share the commercial, because if I share the commercial, it'll flag the video. But yeah, but let me know your thoughts in regards to what he's talking about. All right, here we go. We're back. And we're back. Then I'll share this real quick. So let me know your thoughts. I just wanted to play some of this because he does mention the housing stuff. So, and we are a housing channel, but like we said, the economy coincides with the housing.
Fairness, without tariffs, I wouldn't have been able to get it done. After declining $3,000 under Biden, real incomes are up in the United States by $2,000, $3,000, and even $5,000 and more. Home ownership has always been a symbol of health and vigor.
So incomes have risen since he has taken presidency, and everybody's getting either $2,000 or $5,000 more into your checks. Let me know how your checks working out, because mine ain't seeing that. I'll just be out of
American society, but that goal fell out of reach for millions and millions of people in the Biden era because interest rates went up so high. Today, I'm taking action to bring back this bedrock of the American dream. In recent years, Wall Street giants and institutional investment firms, many of you are here, many of you are good friends of mine, many of you are supporters. Sorry to do this, Joe, I'm so sorry. But you've driven up housing prices by purchasing hundreds of thousands of single-family homes, and it's been a great investment for them, often as much as 10% of houses on the market. The crazy thing is a person can't get depreciation on a house, but when a corporation buys it, they get depreciation. Okay, that's something we're going to have to think about too. I don't know if too many people think about that. You buy a corporation, they buy 500 houses, they buy hundreds of thousands, they buy 500 houses, they can take depreciation. A person.
So with him saying like 500 houses right here, when I was saying, because people were trying to figure out like where would he cap the large institutional investor ban at? And I'm like, since he's saying 500 houses, I feel like he's going to go. I feel like the cap when they have this conversation might be like 100 houses, just because I'm just listening to like his words. But it's like, this is stuff that we have been talking about online for the last couple of years, especially again, if you're in an area that a lot of institutional investors are buying in, which one of them is Metro Atlanta. So that's why I preach about this. And I've made videos on my channel about these investors in our market, because they are not only can they drive the housing values up so quickly, they can strip them so quickly as well. And that's what's happening in some of these markets in the Metro Atlanta area, even though you still have some people around there acting like it don't exist. And I'm gonna tell you guys this one story after we finish this, because I thought this was, I'm so confused at how realtors are doing business down here, which I've been confused for the last 3 years. And I'm kind of getting pissed the heck off, because I'm like, what is happening in the business that I've decided to be a part of for years, and what is going on with these colleagues that I call colleagues. Because you have some great realtors and some great real estate professionals. Don't get me wrong. I don't want to knock the great ones, but you got some ones that's like, what? I'm confused. Miss H said, keep insurance, driver license up to date. Please don't touch your cell phone ever when driving. You will get a huge $1,000 fine. They watching from cameras everywhere now. Card tags will send bill. Wow. I know in Philadelphia, because I'm praying to God I don't get no ticket. Jesus, please. When I was in Philadelphia in December, I was up north for a while, and I went to go see my mom, and they on down Broad Street, if you go above a certain mileage, they're ticketing you $100 for like speed and everything. I'm like, what the heck? So I'm like, please don't give me no ticket, because I don't need no more ticket. I don't need no more money, you guys. I'm barely making it day to day. So as you guys hear, Miss H said, be very mindful, be very careful when driving, and stay off of those phones, because you do not want no $1,000 fine. That's ridiculous. Gavin said, we're all crazy. Some just a little or a lot more than others. We definitely are. We definitely are all crazy. Like you said, my mom has been talking about stimulus checks from Trump for months now, but we haven't seen anything. Yeah, I know he had made mention at one time where they were talking about giving out more stimulus checks. I think that would do the economy a disservice because of where we're at in regards to so much debt. And so if he did that, I think that would just mess us up even more outside of him, doing what he did as far as bringing in Elon Musk and creating this whole division where he was trying to, facilitate and get rid of things and this and that. And meanwhile, you're paying that particular entity more money to get rid of something else. And there's fraud in the system. It's fraud in the American system. It's fraud all over the world. And there's a lot of things that that if he getting rid of the right things could help us out. So don't get me wrong. However, at the end of the day, it's like we have to make sure we're mindful where we're putting the money at. We can't spend more money to get rid of somewhere else, that's possibly using money correctly. If they're using it wrong, of course, get rid of them. Get rid of the aspects that's doing it wrong. But we also got to understand how we're shifting money. Kotexita said, look up DFlock, avoid the cameras. Okay, so he said, look up DFlock and avoid those cameras, you guys. So, and yeah, like I said, they've definitely been putting more cameras out. So this is him talking about the housing market.
Sweats and works and buys one house they can't. But homes are built for people, not for corporations, and America will not become a nation of renters. We're not going to do that. That's why I have signed an executive order banning large institutional investors from buying single-family homes. It's just not fair to the public. They're not able to buy a house. And I'm calling on Congress to pass that ban into permanent law, and I think they will. One of the biggest barriers to saving for a down payment has been surging credit card debt. The profit margin for credit card companies.
So that's him talking about the institutional investors, which we kind of dove into a little bit. As far as him talking about they can rise prices, they can strip equity, that is true. We've discussed that, and we know that to be true. If depending on where you're at, they can definitely do that. So I agree with him on that aspect. However, also, again, the American government, they called for these people to jump into the space. So you cannot call for people to jump into the space. You cannot rally with them in regards to saying, hey, give me your money for political campaigns, and then turn around. Well, hey, let me shut up because I'm going to go on a whole soapbox right now. Where's the smoke blowing from? All over, from the ears, from the nose, from the butt, from the mouth, everywhere. All right, this is the last talking point with him, and this is again about the housing market.
They're all respected. They're all great. Everyone that I interviewed is great. Everyone could do, I think, a fantastic job. Problem is they change once they get the job. They do. They're saying everything I want to hear, and then they get the job. They're locked in for 6 years. They get the job, and all of a sudden, let's raise rates a little bit. I call them.
So this is him talking about Jerome Powell, talking about he basically, had a conversation with Jerome Powell, put him in position to be the chair of the Fed. And then basically he wanted him to go in there and to keep lowering rates. And Jerome Powell was like, oh no, I actually have to make sure that we don't mess this economy up and really take it all the way down to the bottom, to the bottom, to the bottom. So he was like, I can't do that. And so basically Trump is like, oh, you turned on me. Like I put you in position and you turned on me. Just like he feels like Elon Musk did and all these other people did as well. Right. But when we're in these positions, we hold these roles per se, we need to make sure we're doing stuff correctly for the bigger picture and not just for self. So yeah.
Sir, we'd rather not talk about this. It's amazing how people change once they have the job. It's too bad. Sort of disloyalty, but they got to do what they think is right. We have a terrible chairman right now. Jerome, too late Powell. He's always too late. And he's very late with interest rates, except before the election, he was just fine for the other side. So we're going to have somebody that's great, and we hope he does the right job. Last week, the average 30-year mortgage rate dropped below 6% for the first time in many years. Another major factor in driving up housing costs was the mass invasion of our borders. And I have to say one thing about housing, because nobody ever says this. I am very protective of people that already own a house, of which we have millions and millions and millions. And because we have had such a good run, the house values have gone up tremendously. And these people have become wealthy. They weren't wealthy. They become wealthy because of their house. And
well, even people who have been able to see appreciation in a house and have been able to possibly gain wealth, because you cannot gain any wealth until you sell the house. The house has to sell before you possibly gain any type of appreciation in regards to that equity in the house to be wealthy. And if we're living in an environment where the only thing in which creates wealth is somebody buying a home, why can't we find wealth in other places? Don't get me wrong, it's great again to own a home. I advocate for homeowners and home buyers, right? But just to say wealth is all in people's homes, and that could possibly be the only area in which they were able to possibly get wealth. But again, you have to sell the house to get wealthy.
Every time you make it more and more and more affordable for somebody to buy a house cheaply, you're actually hurting the value of those houses, obviously, because the one thing works in tandem with the other. And I don't want to do anything that's going to hurt the value of people that own a house who, for the first time in their lives, are walking around the streets of whatever city they're in, very proud that their house is worth $500,000, $600,000, $700,000. Now, if I want to really crush the housing market, I could do that so fast and people could buy houses, but you would destroy a lot of people that already have houses. In some cases, they've mortgaged their house, and the mortgage would be very low. And all of a sudden, the mortgage without any changes becomes very high, and they end up losing the house.
Well, that's what's already happening. People who bought in 2021, 2022 at low interest rates, a high price of the house, they bought a $500,000 house, they had a lower mortgage rate, and then all of a sudden taxes went up, home insurance went up, HOA fees went up depending on where they bought at. So they still can lose the house. I'm seeing it happening, especially in the metro Atlanta area. So I'm like, a lot of his talking points, I'm like, dude, you need to come and actually come to the ground level, come to the battlefield and talk to local people in the market and understand what's happening, because he's saying a lot of gotcha, bacha, but he doesn't, it's not corresponding or correlating of what is actually happening. And this is what pisses me off about people in general that get up on stages and they talk about stuff and they're not actually involved in the day-to-day basis of everything. They're not having phone conversations with people looking to buy or sell. They're not actually putting houses up on the market to sell. They're not seeing some of their clients giving their houses back to the bank for foreclosure. They're not seeing other clients trying to get out of houses, but they can't because they bought too high. And now everything in their neighborhood has softened. They bought at 261. Houses are now 239, 205. They got a down payment assistance program that they got to repay back. They can't get out of the house. And then they also refinanced and did a loan mod for a 40-year term. Like all this stuff I'm seeing, I'm having these conversations. This is what makes me so mad. And this is even just outside of looking sometimes on YouTube and listening to other people in real estate and people's situations. I'm like, are y'all not experiencing what I'm experiencing? I know everybody's not. Don't get me wrong. Every market is different. But I'm like, I'm having these conversations, talking to people that are teachers that want to buy a house, but they can't get pre-approved for more than a certain amount. And because of that, they can't buy a house. Like talking to, sellers, like I said, that want to sell, but they can't sell because they're locked in their house. They're stuck. They can't afford to bring money to the closing table. This is what I'm experiencing. So sorry, because I get frustrated because I'm like, I'm having these conversations in real time. And I'm like, this frustrates me a lot. Gavin said, question, how does equity get stripped? So in the sense of equity getting stripped, what happens basically is, let's just say you're in a subdivision, right, of 12 houses. Let's just make it very small. 12 houses, and let's just say 10 of the houses are investor owned, 2 of them are homeowners. The investors bought the houses there for $400,000, and then you as a homeowner thinking that appreciation would happen, that person, one of the investors, let's say, sell somewhere in a sense, and they put it on the market for 420, and you buy it for 420. But then all of a sudden, these investors are not making a profit, or all these homeowners or whoever decides to do them, they're not making profit, right? And they start selling their house for less money because they need to get out of it. And because most times some of these investors do have the cash, the liquidity to kind of move and everything, they will then sell the house. So if you bought it for 420 and now they're selling their houses for 350, they literally stripped your equity. So you could buy into that subdivision at 420, let's say a month before they all decide to sell. And let's say 5 of those investors all sell and they all 380, 360, 350, and they're all competing against each other, right? They're like, okay, this one put it on the market for 380. I'm going to do 360 because then somebody will come over here because it's cheaper than this one. And they'll do that. And what happens is when people start buying after a certain amount have been bought, an appraiser comes and assesses that particular subdivision, because appraisers start in the subdivision and then they work themselves out into the neighborhood and look at comparables that are similar. And so if everything's selling within that year, within 3 month, 6 month to 12-month time frame, and some appraisers are even going out 2 years, depending on if they can't find certain data. But they see those sales and they're depreciating. That's literally stripping your equity as a homeowner. And so now you are technically, depending on how much you put into the house, you could possibly be underwater with your house. Meaning that if you went in there as an FHA loan purchaser or a VA purchaser, which they don't have to put no down payment down, FHA is 3.5%. You're not putting a huge amount of money into the house. So if you have a house you paid for 20 and FHA, maybe once you take the loan on, it's at like 415-ish, I guess. Again, I didn't do the numbers directly. And then as the VA homeowner, you're still at 420. You might be a little bit more depending on how they rolled in those costs, like closing costs or whatever, into that loan. And so now your loan is higher, but yet every house in your neighborhood or subdivision is selling for $50,000 to $60,000 lower. And now you're underwater and your equity has been stripped. So I don't know if that makes sense. I know it's hard because I talk about it a lot and I deal with it about a lot. I'm like rolling off my tongue. So hopefully that made sense of how your equity could possibly get stripped. Gavin. Kotex Caesar says, sell your home, then end up paying $200 a month for rents. Exactly, right? And we talked about this before, right? Kotex Caesar, as far as people who bought homes before the expansion and explosion of home prices, that some of these people, they're not going to sell. They're not going to sell. Some of these homeowners who live in their house, they're also locked in, and they might not be locked in regards to they can't get out the house because they have to bring money to the closing table. Some of these homeowners are locked in because they're like, I don't want to go from a $200 a month mortgage, depending on how much they got left in the loan and when they bought the house, to dang near $2,000, $3,200 a month for rent, depending on where they live at. So you're getting so many different senses of how people are locked in their house as far as trying to sell nowadays, and then also people wanting to buy, but then when they're trying to buy, it's not enough great houses on the market to make that decision to buy. You get a lot of lipstick on the pig, right? So that's why a lot of them shift to new construction. And nowadays we are seeing, new construction builds are not being built very well. It's almost like cardboard, little cardboard houses being put up now. They're not putting firewalls in. They're not doing a lot of stuff. They're skipping steps as far as trying to throw up these houses. And so a lot of things are occurring where you're seeing a WTF in this housing market. Okay. You're seeing like, what the heck is going on? Gavin said, how the heck are we being taxed on unrealized gains? Should be illegal. I agree, Gavin. I agree. I agree. I'm just like, it's just all, I don't know. I just get frustrated. So I don't want to take my frustrations out on this internet. Kotex, he said $2,000 a month rent. They're already collected nearly $50,000. Exactly. So no problem. So hopefully that made sense. And all right. So he was talking a little bit more about that. I don't want to bore you guys too much in regards to that. I'm going to show you real quick the Atlanta housing market, because I am in the Metro Atlanta housing market, according to Zillow, where they're seeing as far as housing. And while I'm showing you this, I'll also tell you guys a quick story about a buyer that I was I actually have been working with this this particular woman for close to a year. She decided to go and shift into renting for a year, and then her lease is about to come up and she wanted to buy. And so we went recently to see a house in a subdivision that she was interested in. We had put a contract in before for a particular house in that subdivision. I don't know if it was the realtor or if it was the seller. I'm not sure. Anyway, the house was priced at $220 originally at that time. They bought it down to $215. I did the comparables in the area, also took into consideration the condition of the house. So we put an offer in at $203, 500 with $3,000 in closing costs at the time. They countered at $203,500 with $1,000 closing costs. The buyer, we talked about that. They agreed in regards to those closing costs. We went in, we had the home inspection done. Typically when you guys are doing home inspections, make sure before you go about doing it, and I always do it too, tell your realtor to do it. Make sure they send a note to that other realtor and say, hey, make sure all the utilities are on and when the home inspector come, right? And that's what I did in regards to that realtor. So the home inspector came, they didn't have the gas on. So since the gas wasn't on, the home inspector could not check the gas. So then I reached back out to the realtor and I said, hey, I sent you a note via email in regards to making sure you have all the utilities on, because the home inspector needs to check all set utilities. And because of that, your seller is going to pay to have that inspected, and my buyer is not paying for that. And so they agreed to do that. That the seller did pay for that reinspection. We went back in. We saw, I also had a roofer come out to check the roof because it's a townhome situation. And in this particular townhome, they did not cover the roof in regards to their HOA. And so when the roofer came out, examined the roof, the roof was older, and we asked for concessions in regards to that roof. And the agents started like sending me stuff, and it's almost like he thought I was dumb. I don't know. And he started making numbers up that I'm like, this is the same number. Needless to say, we fell out of contract with that. That was over a year ago. And then we went back into this neighborhood. They actually end up closing less than what we put under contract for because months went on and the deeper inspections happened in that house. They went less. So they end up selling for $191, about $5,700 in closing costs. So it sell lower. And sometimes they say the first offer is a better offer because if you sit longer, the offer could get lesser. And then sometimes some people make out, they pull off the market and they get more. To each his own. Let's go through this Atlanta market and then I'll shift back into the conversation again. So as of right now, it says Atlanta, Georgia housing market is down 4.3% over a year at 379. That's around where you're seeing that average home price in Atlanta. It's showing the year value change of negative 4.3%. And again, as you guys can see, the map is just showing just Atlanta. I don't know if you guys can see that, but it's just mapping out Atlanta. So again, it's broken down to different areas. And we're seeing like the inventory, the sales, we're seeing how things went up and around this point and came back down around this point. So this is Atlanta. So this is what we're seeing. So if you guys are looking in the Metro Atlanta area, if you do come across, if anyone comes across this video and they're looking, just make sure you have this conversation with your realtor. It's simple. You can go to Zillow real quick. And again, Zillow, this is taking into account all the data. So it's showing from single family to townhouses. So you would have to start to really niche it out to see where it's at as far as the price points. But just make sure you're using a realtor or a real estate professional that is doing this data searching and understanding what's happening in the area. And so I'm going to put on a zip code where we were at 038. We were in 03038. So they're at 250. It's about 2.8% down from year over year. It says pending around 45 days. So homes sit until 45 days. This is the area we were over around in this area. So as you can see, the prices are shifting down depending on where you're at. You can go to this tool. You can use it. I'm a 50-50 with Zillow, right? My thing with Zillow, my gripe with Zillow, the only gripe I had with Zillow is that they compare everybody's house to make everybody think that their house is worth $1 million. And we know that Zillow don't go inside people's houses. However, I like them on this end because they're taking the closing data. So these are houses that closed and they're taking this data to make these numbers. So that's why I'm 50-50 with Zillow, because Zillow is a data platform. It's outsourcing the data. And then as us realtors through our MLS, we then outsource our listings. So I like them in the sense of that they do capture the data, just like Redfin and all these other platforms. They're data capturers. Question: when living in a townhome, when a roof is needed, do all the people have to get a new roof or just a new home? So in the Metro Atlanta area, it's just you could get the new roof. It also depends on how your HOA goes about it, right? And what do they cover? Because some HOAs actually cover your roof. And if the HOA covers your roof down in Metro Atlanta, this is what they do. If the HOA covers your roof, they'll say, we'll do your roof, but we need about 5 or 6 other people that want their roof done too, because it's just easier for them if the roofer comes out and they can kind of knock out as many as possible. That's like one homeowner I was helping. That HOA took care of like their decks and all that stuff. And when I talked to HOA, they're like, yeah, we'll maintain any things with the deck, but we prefer about 3 or 4 other people who have deck issues or want to get their deck done. But typically it's based on how your HOA kind of has that. If they have, if they fix your roof for X, Y, and Z, but if they don't, then you're just on it by yourself to get your own roof done. So hopefully that helps. So it just depends on your HOA. All right. And so we will stop sharing that. I'll tell you my last story and then I'll jump off here because I don't want to take up your whole night. I appreciate everybody jumping on, being a part of this discussion tonight. And so when it came back to that particular buyer that we were talking about, that was the year before, we went back in this year to another a house that was similar in the area, and when we put an offer in, they were at 205 500. We put an offer in for 195 500. We also put an offer in for about 5,500 in closing costs, a home warranty in place. And the reason why I did these things is because when I asked the agent, one, the homeowner bought the house 4 years ago. I saw how much the homeowner bought the house for. They bought it for 190. So I understand the space, and it's hard for them to really go that low, right? However, once I did the math, I saw the back end as far as what their mortgage was at when they took it at 2022. I think they got it, where they took it at, and I just started running numbers, and I estimate numbers, and I always lowball them before I highball them when I do my estimation. And with that being said, I priced it that way. One, because the house directly across the street sold for 191. We were actually in that house. We were under contract for the house. So I understand what that house the house compared to this house. Then also in their seller's property disclosure, the homeowner act like nothing ever happened in the house for the last 4 years they've been in the house. And I'm like, I'm not saying that nothing. I don't know. I don't know anybody that tells me they lived in the house for 4 years, and I could be wrong because I don't know everybody. And nothing popped up in your house. Like nothing happened around your house. Nothing popped up in your house. So for it to say like no for every question and blank for nothing, they didn't know how old the roof was, which I understand because they bought the house from Open Door. And this is something that they need to put in place as far as investors. Like investors, you know how old your roof is, you know your systems, you know your units, you know everything because you bought the house either from somebody else or you had it since the house was built, so you know how old the roof is. And so they need to be able to put those things into the disclosures, and in Georgia they can actually get away without doing that and having a latent defect disclosure because they're like, well, I'm an investor, I've never lived in a house, so I don't know anything about the house, and they can get away with that down in this state because Georgia is a buyer beware state. So that's another thing too, as a buyer, if you're buying a house, see if your state is a buyer beware state and approach your buying experience with that mindset in place. And Georgia is a buyer beware state. And so with that being said, we put the offer in there because we don't know of anything. I asked the agent because she possibly, asked the homeowners, had they serviced their units, whether it be the water heater, the HVAC system, has there been any servicing done? She said she would. Didn't hear back from her. So we just put the offer in because at this point, I'm like, I'm asking you questions. You're not talking to your clients basically. And so then we put the offer in. So then I get this long email. Because I write out an email and I always say like, hey, I wrote this email. I put an offer in here because X, Y, and Z, right? Thank you, Miss H. Have a good night. Thank you for joining us. I'm gonna wrap this up soon because I know I went over. I didn't expect to go over 30 minutes, but I figured I would end it off with like this little real estate story because I feel like I don't ever give you guys enough of my own personal real estate stories, and I got a lot of them. And so we put the offer in, right? And when we put the offer in, she wrote back this long email in regards to like, oh, the offer is too low. And then she said about me using the house across the street that sold for 191. She's like, oh, that's not a comparable because I talked to that agent, and the agent said that house had an extreme wood rot damage with the water and blase. And so I'm looking at the email and I'm like, she don't know that we were under contract for that other house. So I actually know what the inside of the house looks like. And I know that it did have like wood rot damage from the water damage. And before even putting an offer in that house, I asked my client, are you sure you want to put an offer into this house? Because I don't want you to buy a money pit. And she wanted to do it because she had friends that were contractors that could repair stuff or fix things. And so with this house, it was water damages that you could see in the ceiling in certain areas. So I'm like, okay, well, if that house had similar damage, this house has damage. You're not even stating what the damage was. At least with that house, they disclosed it. You didn't disclose it here. So we don't have no insight about what the actual damage is. So if that one has wood rot, then this has wood rot too, because we saw the damage in the ceiling. And then she goes on to say, you can revise your, so she says, so because of that, we're just going to take that house out and it's not a comp. I'm like, what? I'm like, wait, so we are just removing comps out of data now because the house had wood rot damage? I'm like, that's not how it works. I was like, okay, I gotta be mindful that these agents just do what the heck they want to do. I'm like, ma'am, It's certain one-offs that appraisers look at when it comes to appraising properties. If it's one random foreclosure in a subdivision, they're not going to use that because it's a random distress foreclosure. If it's one estate sale in the area, they're not going to use that because it's another thing. Typically, estate sales, foreclosures, they sell less because it's a distress sale and also it's a get rid of the house quick sale. So they typically don't use those particular things if it's just a one-off. However, if it's a mass of them like happening, like 4 foreclosures, and it's happening, then they'll start using the foreclosure data. And then also if there's just a bunch of random sales at a certain price point, they'll start using it. But I'm like, you just can't say because that house across the street, I talked to the agent and it had wood rot damage, I'm taking that out as a comp. I'm like, okay. I'm like, woo. I'm like, I don't know what's happening with these realtors, baby. I'm just like, and I'm sitting on the sideline because I just don't understand. And it really frustrates me because I'm like, the audacity to say you're just going to remove a comp, like you are the bank or the appraiser that the bank send out, or just because you talk to the agent. And I didn't even I didn't even get back and forth, didn't even get in a situation with the lady. I just talked to my client, said, hey, this is what they're saying. Do you want to move forward with this? It's up to you. They want you to pay what the price is listed at. They don't really want to give no closing costs. They want you to bake it into the price. And what I mean by bake it into price, they want her to go above the 205 to like 210 to get the $5,000. We're not doing that because in a declining market, why would I bake concessions into a price? That doesn't make sense because you'll go in underwater. That's just, my mindset. I'm just trying to protect the client. And I tell the client this, and you do what you want to do. You make your own informative decision. You move about life how you want to move about life. I can't stop you from making your decision as a buyer or a home seller. I'm just telling you the information so you can do what you want to do with it. And so the client was like, no, I'm good. I don't want to buy no house because I don't want to have myself upside down. And so we kind of left it at that. The realtor then decided to call my client's lender. And I'm like, why are you calling their lender? Because we're not under contract. So typically, if I'm working with a home seller and I'm going under contract with a buyer, I will call the lender just to make sure the loan is clear. But if you're not under contract with us, you don't call the lender just to call the lender, because what you were trying to do is you were trying to get the lender to bump up try to figure out how high she could go on her loan because you was trying to get her to buy the house. These are the people that I'm like, I'm very leery of. And I tell people, be careful when you're working with real estate, realtors in this business, just because some of them do some shady stuff. And I'm like, don't do that. And of course, I didn't reach out to her because I was like, you know what? I don't do business like that. So I'm not going to reach out to you. But I'm like, but because I do business honestly, respectfully, transparently, all information gets back to me because people value me and what I do. And so I was kind of turned off. But again, that was just a short real estate story. Let me know your thoughts if you guys are watching this on a replay. I appreciate everybody joining us tonight. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Also hit that like button. It helps to push us through the algorithms. I'll be back here next Sunday at 7 p.m. as well, Eastern time. I probably won't jump on here Wednesday because I have something else to do on Wednesday. But I will see you guys next Sunday, 7 p.m. Eastern time. Hit that subscribe button. Hit that like button. Share the video if it makes sense to you and you feel like somebody needs to hear it. And then also, after this video is over, if you're watching a replay, hit that hype button. It should be a button below. If it's not there this time, it'll probably show up later on. It's a shooting star, and it helps to push us through the algorithm even more. YouTube new super like button. All right, you guys, take care. Have a wonderful Sunday. Bye-bye.